Now, the federal government has set up a team to make sure local governments in Nigeria can manage their own money and make their own decisions. This is because the Supreme Court recently ruled that local governments should be independent and not controlled by state governments. Now, the team, led by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, will work to ensure that local governments get the autonomy that they deserve. And this means that they'll be able to use their funds to improve their communities without needing permission from the state government. And the goal is to give local governments the freedom to serve their people better and to make sure that they're treated fairly under the law. Now, to discuss more on this, we have two guests joining us. One is Eugene Odey. He's a legal practitioner from Rivers State, and we also have joining us virtually as well, Sogbeye Eli, former chairman, Degema Local Government Area, Rivers State. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us at this time.
Thank you for having me.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to be here.
All right, so let me begin with Sogbeye. Now, Sogbeye, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the 10-man interministerial committee that has been established by the federal government with the primary goal to ensure that the local governments are granted full autonomy. What do you think about those in the members and also their portfolios?
First off, I think I see gaps, glaring gaps that would work against the implementation of the decision of the Supreme Court, if that is what they want to do. I'm one of those who believe that moving away from the Supreme Court judgment itself, what needs to be done is a constitutional amendment that brings local governments completely into a framework where they are legally free from every encumbrance, as presently constituted. Leaving it for just the judgment and then asking a committee to sit down, an interministerial committee to sit down and implement the judgment would leave more questions than answers. For instance, I looked at the composition of the committee. I did not see anybody representing the local governments themselves. I didn't see, okay, there's somebody representing the local governments. There's nobody representing the National Assembly, as well as the Senate Assembly, which have the power to make laws, and upon which laws the local governments operate. The constitution as personally considered says that State House Assembly will make laws to run councils across the federation. What that means in effect is that you need to amend that law to bring it in at par with what happens in Abuja councils. In case of Abuja council, 6 of them, it's the National Assembly that legislates for them. All right. So if you have a situation where you want to break the council free from the stranglehold of the states and still leave them at the level where they are without any form of legislative intervention to amend the constitution, then
so wait, are you saying that the combination of the 10 members that are heading this committee, the combination of them, the representatives of state governors and also local governments, and also the representative of the chairman of Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Committee, that this combination are not enough, or we would need more, especially that from the legislative?
That's the point I'm making. In the judgment that brought us to this point, I did not see where the Supreme Court nullified the section of the Constitution providing for a joint accounts allocation committee, for instance. I didn't see where the Supreme Court nullified the provision for the State House Assembly enacting laws to run the local governments of their respective states. I did not see where the Supreme Court nullified section of the Constitution providing for state independent electoral commissions to conduct local elections in the states. These are fundamental requirements. So if you want to really operate a local government system as full of autonomy, then you must address these issues. And as you can address those issues without bringing the legislative apparatus to amend the law, amend the constitution into play. I thought that we should have a member representing the National Assembly, as well as somebody representing the House Assembly of the states in that committee. Then we'll have a balance. At the moment, I don't see how we can implement that in already. We're having a red flag from your state, where the governor of the state has said they are not going to allow that kind of autonomy as when stage happen. local governments are supposed to be part of the states. So if you want to have a wholesale correction of what appears to be constitutional infraction, that is limiting the power of local governments to operate fully, then must amend the constitution. That's the way to go.
All right. So, Eugene, do you agree with Sogbeye? He has actually said that, he has already seen gaps that would work against the decision of the Supreme Court, and there should be members representing the assemblies as well.
Well, I agree with him. Safe to say that that committee, as far as I'm concerned, is unconstitutional. It has no legal power. It has no force of law. It has no bite. If the essence of setting up that inter-ministerial committee is for purposes of executing the judgment of the Supreme Court that spoke to the autonomy of local government councils, then that committee has no power, it has no force of law, it has no backing, it has no legislative impetus to enforce that judgment of the Supreme Court. In fact, from when that judgment
I'm so sorry, Eugene. Is it possible for you to disconnect your headphones so we can hear you clearly?
Okay. All right. Let's see. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yeah, this is a lot better. Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Eugene. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Now, what I was saying is that that committee, for whatever it's worth, has no might, has no legal backing, has no force of law. If the idea is to implement that judgment of the Supreme Court, that's why I'm saying I agree with my learned friend Sogbeye Eli on the aspects that before such pronouncement of the Supreme Court will find life, there has to be consequential legislative action by the National Assembly to tinker with especially the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because the Constitution is suprema lex. It's the supreme law from which every authority derives their power, okay, including the Supreme Court of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and also the National Assembly. Now, the idea is that the Constitution itself says if there's anything that runs foul or runs contrary to the provisions of the Constitution, that other thing, law, whatever, either judgment or law, shall be null and void to the
Hello, Eugene. All right. Well, just before we get to Eugene, are you back?
That makes.
All right.
Yeah, I'm back. That makes provision.
Please go ahead. All right. Let's come back to you, Sogbeye. Now, the control of the local government system, by governors dates back to 1999. Now, given the history of federal and state government interference and also historical dependence of local governments and state governments, how do you think that this committee will address resistance from state governments to the implementation of local government autonomy? That's if, everything is at par and, they now have representatives of the assemblies as well.
I think for me, I want to emphasize here, except for narrowing it down to fiscal autonomy, but what I saw in that composition, I see representative of the Central Bank, definitely Mobilization Commission, Minister of Finance. That is not the autonomy that we're talking about. Autonomy means absolute independence. As it stands right now in Nigeria today, the president cannot stay in Abuja and willy-nilly sack a governor without constitutional consequences. I'm not talking about sponsoring the House Assembly to impeach a governor. Not talking about declaring emergency rule like we saw under Obasanjo. No. But the governor does not serve the state as a prefect under the supervision of the president. So if we want to have autonomy in that kind of light for local government councils, then you must move beyond just financial autonomy. For instance, what are we looking at? That committee cannot provide for instance, upgrading the customary courts or magistrate courts in the local government to become the judicial arm of the local government council. They can also upgrade the maybe vigilante groups and all that to become the law enforcement arm, as it were. So you need to go far beyond what you have had as composition now. A far-reaching reform of the local government system must encompass constitutional amendments. So you knock off the provision for joint account allocation committee, where the state supervises funds coming to the local government councils. You must take out the constitution. You must also take out the ability of the governor, the power of the governor to supervise as it were, and to remove at will local government chairman. Of course, that also means that the power to appoint a commission at the state level to conduct local elections must be taken away. Now we can have what we want to call autonomy. What I see in that committee now, as presently constituted, the dissemination committee is about fiscal autonomy. I'm not sure that's the problem. But they're simply moving like from point A to point B and not arriving at a destination, because we're going to deal with the issues of financial prudence and fiscal transparency at that level. There's still a lot of opaqueness right now, so you need to strengthen the institution around the local government system to allow for autonomy to work the way it should work. The country I see now, that committee cannot handle that. Okay. It's all about sharing the money, and the money should not pass through governors, go to the local government chairman straight. The accountable procedures, as it were, procedure for accountability are not entrenched, are not going to work, because the liberty that comes with autonomy is not present. If the money will still come through the states, and then the federal government will monitor, again, that's a violation of federation principles. Federation simply means that the federation units must have a wide latitude to handle themselves on the issues on their own without interference or supervision. So I don't think that this committee, as presently constituted, can deal with the issue without consequences. There has to be full autonomy. That means there must be amendments to the constitution, as I said. So if for you to amend the constitution, you must have two-thirds of both chambers of the National Assembly, passing that resolution, and then of course there must be a concurrence from two-thirds of the states. That is at the State House Assembly. Two-thirds of that must concur before it will pass. So that's why you need that component too in this kind of committee. Until that happens, it will be like President Buhari went to pass Executive Order 10 before he left office to grant similar autonomy to local governments, and it did not work because the Supreme Court struck it down that time. So now that Supreme Court had the courage to do the right thing, well, we must also take it a step further by allowing the autonomy to percolate downstairs to the point where Constitution was amended to take away State Joint Account Allocation Committee, take away the state electoral commissions that conduct local elections. All of that must go before you can have full autonomy.
All right. So, Eugene, while we allow you to continue with what you were saying earlier, Sogbeye has actually said that the Constitution has to be amended to strengthen the local government. If not, there would be no autonomy. Please go ahead.
Absolutely on that point. That's the point I was making. That committee, as best, the best that can come out of that committee is probably a memo, an advisory document to advise Mr. President to engage the National Assembly to commence the process of amending the provisions of the Constitution. But though they termed it implementation committee, I wonder how they are going to implement that judgment without necessarily taking out these express provisions of the Constitution. Like I told you, the Constitution is the guiding principle. The Constitution is suprema lex. It is a document that binds both the Supreme Court, National Assembly, the governors, including Mr. President himself. You know, we are operating a federal system of government. Much as it is desired that local governments should enjoy autonomy, we have advocated for it at several fora to drive down development to the grassroots. But things must be done according to the law, according to the Constitution. Anything outside the Constitution will amount to illegality. You won't be able to cook up an illegal structure to be able to enforce, to be able to house express provisions of the Constitution. That is not going to work. So I expect that now that the Supreme Court has expressed, the Court of Policy has expressed its desire to do the right thing, we expect the National Assembly to activate the process of amending the Constitution, like my learned friend Sogbeye Eli rightly pointed out.
All right, all right.
Procedure.
So when we're talking about amending the constitution and, for the implementation to work, are you saying that the timeline, given to them, that's the timeline of 3 months, might not be enough for all that to happen?
The committee itself is suspect because they don't even have the power to implement nothing. As long as the constitution still emboldens the state government to operate the joint account and also still empowers the state assembly to make laws governing local government administration, and then you still have the states conducting local government elections, it still gives the states, per se, governors, a large constitutional power to lord over state government. As long as that is possible by the express provisions of the constitution, this committee, I don't think, will have the power to be able to enforce whatever they want to implement, force the states to. This is a constitutional democracy. You cannot, if it was a military administration, then you can say, okay, you can lord it over the states, but states have their own powers. States are autonomous. Okay, the constitution has given them such powers, and the president cannot, by fiat, force them to go outside what the constitution, the powers of demean or take out or take away from them powers given to them by the constitution.
All right, Sogbeye, coming back to you now, Eugene has said that states have their own power, and until the local governments are given their own powers, that it might not work. But some people seem to think that either way, the state governments would simply find ways to circumvent the autonomy and also maintain their grip on local government funds. Now, I actually read on an investigation by the Sun newspaper, that in some southern states, the governors have appointed or anointed persons who they believe can easily allow them a free rein on the allocations, as the next chairman of such councils. And also in one of the northern states, a governor threatened council chairmen who embrace financial autonomy with only one term in office, except, they elect or to maintain collaborative or joint control of their council's funds with state government. So would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Okay, again, let me reiterate for emphasis that if this is about autonomy of local government councils, then we are not going to do what our fathers did with acquiring flag independence. It goes without saying, as my brother Eugene has said over and again, the constitution itself is the ground norm, is the beginning and end of everything about this country, about the laws of our land, about institutions, about persons and how we operate and interact with each other or one another. Now, if the Supreme Court speaks as it has done, you don't need the committee to begin to enforce the Supreme Court's pronunciations. That in itself is an aberration. The Supreme Court speaks the force of law and it takes immediate effect. You don't need another agency, a committee, whatever name called, to come and sit down, implement it, because the letters of the Supreme Court judgment are clear enough. They're unambiguous. So agencies that are bound by the order simply go to work. But all of this charade, for me, charade is playing to the gallery. Do the right thing. Let the president, on the strength of that judgment, having an advisory from his Attorney General of the Federation, proceed to the National Assembly with proposals for constitutional amendments in the areas of take away State Joint Account Allocation Committee, number one. Number two, take away the power of the states to conduct local government elections in the name of state electoral commissions. Number three, abolish what they call House of Assembly, sitting down as the supervisor of local governments under Section 8 of the Constitution, a law they make. Let the councillors elected on the platform of local government councils be the legislative arm of the council, true and truly. So act as a checkmate, as it were, with power of oversight, lawmaking, and all whatnot for that level of government. Let us take it a step further by upgrading customary courts, area courts, and as it were, to become the judicial arm of the local government administration at that level. So you now have that kind of three structure of governance, where you have the executive arm of council, led by local government chairman, his vice, and then, of course, his appointees as supervisors, advisors on the one hand, the councillors working as the legislative arm, on the other hand. And now, on the third arm, they have the judicial arm, which is the upgrade of magistrate courts or customary courts, area courts, as the case may be. Now you can be the top about autonomy. So when the map funds come, then that means that local government chairman will attend, or the representatives, the supervisor of finance will attend PAC meetings in Abuja, where the money for the states, money for the states, money for the local governments will go to the local government council direct. So that's supervision. Just like the federal government does not supervise the states now. When they do that, they have fiscal autonomy settled. When they take away the issue of the State Assembly enacting a law to control local government councils, they have also taken away the issue of political control. And now the local governments can now breathe life. I'm sure the idea of the local government reforms of 1976 of Dasuki captured a lot of this, where local governments were allowed to have some assets. And then, of course, in 1976, what they had was local elections are run without political parties. Independent candidates were allowed. That way, political parties don't go and boss it over the people. You don't hear governors and anything candidates of their own choice because power now flow from the streets when people. When we had the June 12 election in Nigeria in 1993, at the so famous Tomorrow, it began that way, even though we had political parties. But it was option 04, which allowed people to queue up and vote almost without interruption. So we must go back to that kind of thing. So if what we want to do is autonomy for local governments that function and deliver the mandate to the people, then we must move away from just looking at just fiscal autonomy to wholesale administrative capabilities for the councils to deliver on the mandate and be held accountable by the respective arms of the local government system. Until that happens, we're wasting our time. Of course, special rulers coming here. If you give them a role too at that level, maybe they may also help to balance the system out. Otherwise, if you don't give any roles, special rulers, then of course, we're simply having a merry-go-round.
All right, so talking about balancing the whole system out, Eugene, the whole idea of, local government autonomy, to many Nigerians, they see it as just a metaphor, for more money for politicians to steal. And Sogbeye actually mentioned something in that respect earlier while he was talking as well. Now, do you think that, the committee can absolutely prevent that? If everything has been set up and all that, do you think that a committee can absolutely prevent the usual suspects, that's, corrupt officials and politicians, from siphoning off local government funds that's totaling trillions in the budget?
I've told you that committee that has been set up has no legal impetus. My learned friend Sogbeye Eli has told you that we have not heard the last yet. Already we are seeing signals from Oyo State and some states in the north already rebelling against the idea, the concept of local government autonomy. Still holding on to, rightly so, holding on to the powers provided for them under Section 162 of the Constitution and Section 8 of the Constitution. Until that is dealt with, this committee will just be a gathering in futility.
Well, I'm sure if they're actually serious about it, then they would actually, look into what both of you have said about, having representatives of the assemblies as well.
No. My issue is not whether they have people they have enough representation or not.
And also strengthening the local government.
My issue is actually the fact that whether it is properly represented or not, the outcome of that committee has no binding force on the state government, okay? Because, of course, the Constitution empowers the states to make laws in respect of local government administration and all that. And the state, as it is right now today, still has the power to conduct local government elections and all that. This committee cannot change that. They cannot do otherwise. The establishment of the state joint local government account is a constitutional issue. The committee cannot change that. It is only the National Assembly that can change that. And until that is done by way of constitutional amendment, the committee has no power. The outcome, whatever they do, has no force of law. It has no legal backing. It has no bite until whatever the Supreme Court has said is translated into a constitutional amendment where all these things are dealt with constitutionally. then the committee, whether it is properly constituted, properly funded, it doesn't matter who and who is a member of that committee, they don't have what it takes to be able to implement the judgment of the Supreme Court. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us on this. We've had Sogbeye. Yes, we had Sogbeye joining us virtually. Eugene Odey, first of all, legal practitioner, Rivers State. And also, we also have Sogbeye Eli, former chairman, Degema local government area, Rivers State. Thank you so much for speaking to us on this.
Thank you very much. Sogbeye Eli, it's good to see you again.